12 years. 12 years of clawing my way up, negotiating impossible deals, expanding operations, rescuing this company from the brink. His company. 12 years of proving, time and time again, that I was the best person to lead Whitman Logistics. And yet, here I sit, in a dimly lit private dining room, surrounded by the city's elite, my father at the head of the table, his eyes gleaming with pride that doesn't belong to me. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. But even I hadn't expected the audacity. Richard Whitman stands, glass raised, a practiced smile on his face. The room falls silent, a hush of expectation. Tonight is a celebration of our success, a success built on family, loyalty, and a vision for the future. And so I'm proud to announce, he pauses, savoring the moment, I already know, that my daughter, Madeline, will be stepping in as the new CEO of Whitman Logistics. For a moment, the words don't register. The sound around me warps, like I've been submerged underwater. The room erupts in applause. I feel it before I fully process it, the slow, sinking tilt of my world. Madeline, Maddie. My 25-year-old stepsister, who has never worked a day in her life, who once called our distribution centers the places with the trucks, who spent last week debating whether to launch a lifestyle brand or a wellness podcast. She blinks in surprise, as if she herself wasn't expecting it, before breaking into a gleeful, oblivious giggle. Oh my God, Charlotte, don't look so serious. I'll need your help, obviously. The clinking of glasses, the murmurs of congratulations, it all blurs into the background. 12 years. I inhale slowly, fingers curling around the stem of my wine glass. There's a burn behind my ribs, something between rage and amusement. But I don't react. I won't react. Instead, I smile, lift my glass, and toast. To the future. My father nods approvingly, mistaking my silence for acceptance. He doesn't know. None of them know. But as I sip my wine, I'm already planning my counterattack. The boardroom is cold. Not physically. Whitman Logistics headquarters is climate-controlled to perfection, but the atmosphere, frigid. I arrived early, as always. My chair at the head of the long glass conference table feels different today. Permanent. The city skyline stretches behind me, a hazy reflection on the polished surface. The boardroom doors open. Richard strides in first, his presence commanding, a man who has never doubted his authority. Maddie follows, heels clacking, posture smug, like she's already picked out new office furniture. I don't stand. I don't offer pleasantries. I just watch. Richard barely looks at me before turning to Graham, the CFO, his CFO, except he isn't anymore. Let's make this quick, Richard says, rolling up his sleeves. Maddie's got meetings with PR later, and we need to start transition planning. He talks like it's already done, like his word still means something. I tilt my head. There won't be a transition, I say. Richard stops mid-motion, brows pulling together. He blinks, a pause, a flicker of something behind his eyes. Annoyance. Charlotte, he sighs, the way one would placate a child. We've been over this. You'll still be involved, of course. We'll find a title that fits. Co-O, maybe. Or something in an advisory capacity. Maddie scoffs. Oh my God, Charlotte, don't be difficult. I told you I'd need your help. Her help. 12 years. I inhale slowly and reach into my folder. My nails tap the surface as I pull out the document and push it across the table, sliding it toward my father. Actually, I say, voice calm, measured, unshakable. It already has. Richard doesn't touch the folder, doesn't even glance at it. He simply leans back, arms crossing, dismissive. This isn't happening. Graham clears his throat, shifting in his seat. His eyes flick toward me, then back to Richard. It is, Graham says carefully. Charlie holds 60%. A crack. A barely there hesitation. Richard stills. Maddie, frowning, reaches for the folder, flipping through the pages without understanding what she's looking at. But Dad said. I lean forward, resting my elbows on the table, interlacing my fingers. Your father doesn't have controlling shares anymore, Maddie. She blinks at me, then at Richard, confused. Richard is staring at the papers now, a muscle in his jaw twitching. Realization hits. It's over. I own the company, not him. Not Maddie. Me, silence stretches, a silence that tastes like victory. I exhale. Slow, deliberate. Then, just like at dinner, I smile. The war starts before I even leave the building. Richard doesn't storm out like Maddie. He doesn't throw things, doesn't yell. No, that would be too easy. He is a man used to winning through influence, through whispered conversations and backroom deals. So that's exactly what he does. By the time I reach my office, the calls have already started. Board members, investors, old allies, people Richard has known for decades. Men who shake hands at country clubs and make deals over 18-year-old scotch. You've made a mistake, Charlie. Your father built this company. Do you really think you can run it without him? There's still time to fix this. Let Richard handle the transition properly. I listened to all of them, and then, one by one, I shut them down. Meanwhile, Maddie does what she does best. She makes a spectacle of herself. Her Instagram story is a masterpiece of manufactured victimhood. A photo of her in tears, probably fake. A screenshot of a family Christmas years ago, irrelevant. A long-winded caption, "I can't believe my own sister would do this to me. I spent my whole life dreaming of following in my father's footsteps, only to have my legacy stolen. I worked so hard to prepare for this moment, and she took it away out of jealousy. Blood should mean something. Family should mean something." The comments flood in. Babe, you deserve better. That's so evil, your sister is trash. Stay strong, Queen. She'll fail without you. I roll my eyes. Maddie couldn't run a lemonade stand, let alone a logistics empire. The difference between us? She thinks PR battles are won with tears. I know they're won with facts. The emergency board meeting. The moment I call the meeting, the room shifts. Not everyone is convinced. Some of them want to believe Richard's narrative. That I'm the ungrateful daughter who stole the company out of spite. That I don't have the experience. That I should step aside and let the real leader take charge. I let them talk. Then I drop the bombshell. A thick stack of reports slides across the table. Financial statements, audit results, internal memos, cold, irrefutable proof. For years, Whitman Logistics has been operating under reckless spending and outdated management. These documents show questionable financial decisions under Richard Whitman's leadership, decisions that nearly drove this company into the ground before I stepped in. Silence. The investors don't know. The media doesn't know. But they will, if we don't take action now. I lean back, giving them time to let it sink in. Power is shifting. The same men who scoffed at me yesterday are now looking at each other, hesitant. They can't ignore the numbers. They can't ignore the truth. And Richard? For the first time, he looks nervous. I almost smile. The war spills beyond boardroom walls. By morning, the headlines are everywhere. Whitman Logistics financial turmoil. Years of mismanagement under former CEO Richard Whitman exposed. Leadership shakeup inside the battle for Whitman Logistics' future. Nepotism, bad investments, and a power struggle, the truth behind the Whitman family feud. The leaks were surgical, not an attack. Just the truth laid bare. Years of reckless spending, shady deals, and nepotism under my father's reign. Things I'd cleaned up behind the scenes. But now, it's public. Richard is livid. I hear it in his booming voice when he storms into my office. His face is red, his jaw clenched so tight I wonder if his teeth will crack. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" His voice is low, dangerous. The voice of a man who has always controlled the narrative. I barely look up from my laptop, calm, unmoved. "I didn't humiliate you, Richard. You did that yourself." A sharp intake of breath, a silence so heavy it makes the air feel thick. "Fix this," he demands. "Make a statement. Tell them it's a smear campaign." I glance at the latest stock reports. Investors are nervous, but they're looking for stability, and I am the only one who can provide it. "No," his face hardens. "You don't understand, Charlotte. This company exists because of me. Everything you have is because of me." Slowly, I fold my hands on my desk, finally meeting his glare. "No, Richard." My voice is steady, controlled, like ice cutting through fire. "Everything I have is despite you." Maddie's meltdown. If Richard is rage, Maddie is chaos. She takes to social media again, this time with less polish and more desperation. "This is insane. My father built this company, and some bitter, jealous witch is trying to erase his legacy. Do not support her. Blood means nothing anymore. If anyone knows a good lawyer, DM me. I will not let her steal my company." And then, the final nail in her self-made coffin, she thinks she's smart, but this isn't over. We'll see what the courts say. The comment section turns into a battlefield. Some people eat up her betrayed heiress act. Others start digging, pulling old articles, company reports, exposing how she never worked a single day in the industry. But the best part? A journalist asks her one simple question. "Maddie, can you explain what Whitman Logistics actually does?" She deletes her account within hours. The final blow. The next morning, Maddie barges into the office, shaking with fury. "I'm suing you." She slams a folder onto my desk. It's empty. I sigh, leaning back in my chair. "On what grounds? You stole my company. Dad chose me and you pulled some sneaky legal shit. It's fraud." My lips twitch. "You'd need to understand the contracts first, Maddie." My voice is slow, deliberate. I tilt my head. "Should I walk you through the fine print?" The color drains from her face. She doesn't understand the contracts. She never did. Her hands curl into fists. Her lip trembles. "This isn't over," she hisses. And then she storms out. Checkmate. Richard retreats. Maddie disappears. The board unanimously backs me. Investors rally behind my leadership. Whitman Logistics is mine. For good. Richard demands a meeting. Not a request. Not an invitation. A summon. It comes through his assistant, formal and clipped. "Mr. Whitman requests your presence in his private office. Urgent." I almost laugh. Even now, he's pretending he has authority. Pretending I'm someone he can command. I go anyway, because I already know how this ends. The final offer. His office hasn't changed. Mahogany desk, antique clock ticking methodically, crystal whiskey decanter. Half empty. Richard stands behind the desk when I walk in, hands pressed against the surface like he's holding himself together. He doesn't offer me a seat. I don't ask for one. 40 million. No preamble. No small talk. Just the number. "For your shares," he clarifies, watching me like a man waiting for a reaction. "You take the deal. You walk away. Clean break. No more fights. No more war. You leave, and we rewrite the past. Your name will always be part of Whitman Logistics history. Just not its future." A bribe. $40 million. Enough to build anything. Start fresh, and yet nothing. Because this was never about money. I let the silence stretch, then exhale slowly. "You still don't get it, do you?" My voice is calm, almost amused. "This was never about taking your money, Richard. It was about making sure you could never take mine." His fingers tighten against the desk. "You think you've won?" His voice is low, dangerous. I reach for the cup of coffee I brought in with me. Take a slow, deliberate sip. Let the warmth settle. Then, I meet his eyes. "No, Richard?" A pause, a smirk. "I know I have." Something in his expression breaks. A twitch in his jaw, a flash of something behind his eyes, not just anger but realization. This is real. He has lost. By noon, the paperwork is signed. Richard Whitman is officially removed from all decision-making roles at Whitman Logistics. By 3 p.m., Maddie accepts the buyout. No press statement, no final words, just a transfer of funds and a quiet, embarrassed exit. By 6 p.m., the office feels different. Lighter. Mine. I stand by the floor-to-ceiling window watching the city below. This is what victory looks like. 6 months later, I step into the executive boardroom, but this time there's no tension, no lingering glances, no doubts hanging in the air, just results. The numbers are splashed across the presentation screen, but I don't need to read them again. I know them by heart. $100 million in valuation. Whitman Logistics has officially surpassed the threshold my father never could. And I did it without him. I glance around the table. Investors lean forward, eager, engaged. The board, once hesitant, now fully in my corner. "This is the most profitable quarter in company history," Graham, my CFO, says with barely concealed pride. A ripple of nods and murmurs. "Your restructuring strategies were bold, but they worked," one of the older board members admits, almost grudgingly. "You've done what your father never could." I smile, just slightly. I don't need to say it out loud, they already know. Richard built the company. But I made it a legacy. Where once there were stale, outdated processes, there is now efficiency, innovation, and strength. Where my father wasted money on ego-driven expansions, I streamlined operations, cut dead weight, and brought in real talent. Richard is gone. Maddie is forgotten. No one mentions them anymore. They are irrelevant. My office, my legacy. The office I now sit in is bigger, sleeker, and entirely mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathe the space in golden afternoon light, overlooking the city I now own a piece of. A plaque sits on my desk, small but weighty, Charlotte Whitman, CEO. For a long time, my father's name sat on this door. Now it's mine, and I didn't inherit it. I took it. The invitation arrives through a simple text. "Dinner, 7 p.m., the club. No please, no explanation. Just an expectation, as if nothing has changed, as if I'm still someone who would jump at his command." I stare at the message for a long moment. Then I reply, "Charlotte, I'll be there. Not for him, for me." The restaurant is old money. Leather seats, mahogany tables, the quiet murmur of power brokers sipping whiskey. The kind of place my father always thrived in, where people speak in favors and deals rather than words. I arrive at 7:02 p.m., a deliberate 2-minute delay. Richard is already at the table, a half-poured glass of bourbon in front of him. He doesn't rise when I approach, doesn't greet me, just watches as I take my seat. We sit in silence for a moment. Then finally he speaks. I underestimated you. Not an apology, not even close, but it's the closest thing I'll ever get. I lift my wine glass, tilting it slightly in a silent toast. That's why you lost. His mouth presses into a thin line. His grip tightens on the tumbler. But he doesn't argue. He knows. We talk, but the conversation is nothing. Shallow observations, empty words. He asks about the company, as if he doesn't already know. I answer without detail. There is no yelling, no lingering resentment, only the unspoken truth hanging between us. He will never say he's proud of me, and I will never need him to. The check arrives. He reaches for it. I've got it, I say smoothly, sliding my card onto the table before he can. His eyes flash. He doesn't argue. He signs the receipt with a slow, measured hand, as if acknowledging the real transaction happening here. I stand first. He does not offer a handshake. I don't expect him to. I don't need him to. With a final glance, I turn and walk away, leaving him behind for good. As I step outside, the night air is crisp. The city hums around me, alive, thriving, just like me. I am no longer my father's daughter. I am Charlotte Whitman, CEO, and I have already won.